Okay, so we'll call the Committee of Whole Council meeting for Monday, January 9th to order. And we will start with the acknowledgements of treaties of peace and friendship. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which will list away Mi'kmaq and Passamaquoddy peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqey title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. Thank you, Walalan. Next is the affirmation of office. We do hereby accept the office of council, will diligently, faithfully, and impartially discharge to the best of our ability the duties of the office as may be imposed upon us by law. Next is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any, if there aren't any additions, or if there are any additions, can I get a motion?
M 2023-0109-1, that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Need a seconder?
Second it.
On the motion, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passed. Conflict of interest. If someone has a conflict of interest, just report it to the clerk. Next are presentations and to council. Councilor Guitar, Danelle.
I have a couple, but my first one is that establishing a youth program for the Village of Belledune, and I'm working with the Health and Wellness Coordinator, Daryl Culligan, to seek out information and possible provincial funding for creating this environment for our youth. We have been in discussion this past year on several occasions, and we've met with some people, and this is much needed program for our kids. It really is. So I spoke with Daryl today, and we'd like to get the involvement of residents, families, and youth to meet up with us, possibly in February at the rec center, just to hear what they would like us to put together. Let's see what their interests are, what they would like to see in our village for the youth, and we'll grow from that. And I'd also talked to several of the fire department, because I believe in the downtown core of Belledune, the Station 1 fire station upstairs, they have an office, and they use it, I believe, once a week, the fire department. But I think that that might be a perfect spot to gather for our youth, because it is in our center of our village. But I will be speaking to them as well, and hopefully we can put something together in the near future and try to move things along in that respect. Anybody like to add on?
I think it's something worth exploring, and I would be willing to attend that meeting and see where, what people think and what they'd like to see.
Yeah, I agree. I would be interested in attending the meeting to see what the want of the people is, and I think it's a good idea, and then we could go from there and decide where we're going to go with it. Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of things that I'd like to maybe food for thought. You know, youth would not, I mean, unless it's on Saturday and Sunday, but this would need to be a program probably that would be established either during the vacation times of summer, you know, Christmas break, that type of thing. But if it's something you're looking at full time, you know, it's going to be basically from, I'm going to say from 4 o'clock on, you know, or 6 to 8 o'clock or whatever it might be. So that would mean we'd need somebody who was, let's say, you know, affiliated with the village to supervise and be accountable for how things went. So just some food for thought, I guess.
No, that's also, we've discussed that as well, and these are things that need to be discussed to find out what is needed and what is wanted in our village. So these are good statements, and we'll have to work on things, but definitely moving forward with this. This is on my agenda for 2023 for sure.
I'm just wondering if maybe you've already considered this, but I think that there's a need for addiction services in this community. And I'm not sure if that's something you've looked into, but if not, I'm thinking it's an avenue that we should pursue and see if we can get somebody in here once a week or whatever, if, you know. And I think that there is a need for people who are willing to accept the help with addictions. I think there's a need for some of them to be able to access programs that are available. And I know that there's a program that helps people who don't have transportation, but I think that they're lacking in volunteers to do that. So I don't know, but I do know that you know, addictions is a problem in this area. And for anybody who's willing to accept the help, I don't know what we can do, but that's an avenue that I think we should explore, as well as what can we do to help them get to those facilities to, you know, to accommodate them. Thank you.
I believe also in the Camelton area, they have a program up there, and I would be more than willing to go out and see how they run theirs, or invite them up here to give us, you know, give us some information on how we can progress with ours. But yes, definitely, there's so many issues in our village with the youth, and we've got to start working towards improving, you know, our community for them.
I'm just thinking too, Marilyn, if you remind me tomorrow, I have a business card from somebody that we had met in Fredericton when we went for the convention, and she may be able to help us with that. Remind me, and I'll give you that information. Yeah.
Okay, the second item,
Could
sorry.
it just ask what the age group, when you say the youth, what age group are you targeting here?
Well, you know, we talked about that today as well, and there's a span between 12 and 17, you know? Anything beyond 17, I think that's a different category, but I mean, between 12 and 17 probably is the age that we're looking at.
You know, and I don't have an issue with any of the conversation. I'm just going to say it this way, is that if you look at the numbers in our community, I believe even in the last election, there was only something like less than 100 under the age of 19 who could not vote. So that's from 0 to 19, we have less than 100 youth in our community. So it's something, maybe get a concrete number and go from there, but just more food for thought.
Okay, the second item on my agenda is the process that the council is going to be using to hire a permanent CAO. We have to move on this, and the sooner the better. We need someone in place. We have to start working on our strategic plan that we haven't even touched base on. So I'm putting my foot forward, and, you know, this is my number one agenda, is getting a CAO in place so that we can start moving on things in our community, in our village, so that we're not stumbling every time we turn around and try to do something. So I'm not sure what the process is going to be, but I would like some input on how we're going to move on this.
I'd like to see us, you know, get the position advertised. There's also, I believe, Brenda and Nicole both have access to an internal database system where they can kind of put it out there with the other municipalities. If there's any, you know, CAOs, especially with the amalgamations that may have lost their positions or be in the market for new employment, I think if we ask them to put something out there, we may get some names back. I'd like to start collecting resumes. And I think that we as council as a whole should start doing it together. We've tried 2 other times. The way we did it those times didn't work. So now I think we have to do this together. Yeah. So that's my thought on it. And I totally agree that that's something that we need to be putting as a priority right now, and moving forward with that.
I also agree we need to move forward with our CAO. We've been going too long now without a permanent one. These temporary ones are great when they're here, but they're often gone in a flash, and it always, doesn't always work out like we like to see it to work out. So I think we need to look at a permanent, and when we hire the CAO, we should be putting a 6-month trial on anybody. That way there, we know in 6 months, if they're not fitting in or they're not doing the position, that, you know, we can move on and try to get somebody else. Not that I want to go another 6 months with a person, but, you know, if it's not the right fit for the job, we need to move on early in it.
I agree with that, and I would like to suggest that before we start the hiring, that we also look at the CAO job description and what our own bylaw states as to what the role of the CAO is, and make any changes to that we see fit prior to the hiring. So I mean, I'm open to meeting with you guys if you want to call a meeting next week, or you know, the sooner the better, and get those things out of the way, and you know, go from there.
Okay, well, I guess my clear message is this. For 2023, on my agenda is to get a full-time permanent CAO in place, our strategic plan put in place, because we have a strong council here. We got to start moving in the right direction, and that's my purpose for 2023. Let's go.
I think you're finished, Council? Okay, I think we're on to administration, I believe.
You have before you the request that came in from the McGinnis, drainage problem on 33 Curry Drive. I provided the letter that we received from the McGinnises, and as well the information on the work that was done going back 2005 in that area. So Mr. McGinnis is looking for some sort of a response as to what the village is going to do or not going to do on his request.
Which home is this? Is that the Papa's home?
I think we need to look at that pipe. I mean, you can visibly see it raised in the road. So I mean, what's going on with it? Is the water still flowing where it's supposed to be flowing, or is it leaving that pipe and flowing where it's not supposed to be flowing? I think that would be the first step, is to getting someone in to look at that pipe and see what's going on with it. It may need to be replaced altogether for all we know.
Yeah, I walked that beach, and there is leakage to the bay in it. I didn't really look at the pipe on people's property or anything like that, but I was just wondering if this problem a long time, or is this just happened in corrosion in the last year or two?
I'm not sure about that, but I mean, the thought that the pipe is visibly raising up across the road, I think whether that's the issue or not, it's still an issue that needs to be fixed anyway. So we may as well look at it all at the same time and fix what needs to be fixed.
Just maybe to shed a little light on the history of that, because I was on council in 2005 when we dealt with the issue. Personally, I am a firm believer that we have, I don't want to say dozens, but I'm going to say there's probably a dozen areas in our community that suffer from exactly the same type of problem. No individual will ever have the financial means to address the floodings and the things that happen on their properties, because it is literally, could be 100, and if my memory serves me correctly, this was a very expensive process that was approved by council to do, and it was put in, and it was put in there because the back part of the property became a hazard for youth. There was water gathering at the end of the property. You know, even there was a situation where council dealt with another piece of property that was having flooding, and my point to all this is very simple. I believe what we need to do is go out and find the areas that are having major issues, deal with them, for lack of a better expression, one at a time. You know, we certainly couldn't say we're going to fix all the flooding problems in 1 year. We need to say, We're here to help people who have major drainage problems and flooding problems. I don't know if any of you have ever had a flood, anything like that in your home. I did during Hurricane Arthur, and I can tell you it's not pretty. So with that said, you know, for me personally, I would like to see something that, you know, basically we find where the issues in our community are, evaluate them on merit as to, you know, how long or how serious a flooding problem it is. And I know we can sit here as a council and say, well, you know, that's not our problem, and we can make all the excuses we want. But the other side of the coin is that if we want to make our community a better place to be, then a lot of this flooding needs to be dealt with. I did visit the site, you know, at the McGinnis, and the pipe is protruding out through the ground. So not only is it a flooding problem, it's probably a hazard for somebody walking down the road that could, you know, on the shoulder of the road, could trip over that pipe and God knows. Even the plow going by could probably pick off half that pipe and break that pipe off the top. So my point is that, yes, we can't deal with them all at once, but there are issues we need to evaluate as a council and as human beings. And, you know, we can sit here and say, well, it's not our money and it's taxpayers' money. And, well, for me, I look at it and I say, if I were in that situation, flooding is something that, you know, it's not a lot of fun. And, you know, people need some help. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't have a problem dealing with the problems one at a time and budgeting for them one at a time. And we'll eventually get to the end of the line, because there's not hundreds of them. There's probably a dozen, if I were to say it that way. But with that said, I believe this is an example of one that, you know, needs to be addressed or needs to be looked at or evaluated, and council needs to make a decision to move what we're going to do with it. So that's some of the history on how all of that materialized.
Know if there's a directive from that we're supposed to take, or are you just gonna just talk about it more and
Well, you know,
direct it at another time?
for me personally, I mean, you know, I'll put it this way: I don't have a problem putting it on the on my agenda for the public meeting on at next week for a motion as to whether we want to deal with it or not, or get an evaluation of what it will cost to repair it.
So when you talk about evaluation, talking about getting some engineering in?
Well, I don't think it has to be engineered. I think it just needs to be, you know, because I think the engineering part was done when the original project was done. I think, you know, I mean, I'm not an engineer either, but maybe we may need an engineer to go in and look at it and give us a recommendation. So maybe that might be the first step. Would that be a...
Because I don't know if there's anybody on staff that got the capability of doing that, to be honest
Well,
with you.
yeah, I agree. So do we need a motion on that?
Probably if you're gonna expend some monies, it's probably best
Okay,
to have the
so,
motion. And then if you just wanna define which engineer
Yeah.
in that motion.
So I believe Roy Consultants did the original project, so they would have the engineering and the schematics to look at. So with that said, if, I'll say it this way, Monday night at the public meeting, I'm going to put a motion on there that we deal with it or get some engineering to bring back to council with a cost estimate. Okay?
Yeah, that's fair, but we have to remember, we have a lot of other people also that's been approaching us for water damage. And we didn't budget for that one. We already budgeted for one this year.
Yes, but this is a pipe that belongs to us that is taking our ditch water and not directing it where it's supposed to go. So in my opinion, I mean, if that is the case, and like we've said, you can literally see the pipe lifting out of the ground, so the water's not going where the engineers intended for it to go. So, and if it's Roy's Consultants that did it, should they not come back up and evaluate the work that they did? Because, I mean, if it was done right, it shouldn't be doing what it's doing. So, do they charge us to even come up to look at work that they've done that is not
Well, I think when they did the work, it wasn't for the particular property owner that you're talking about right there now. It was for the property owner that was behind that property. There was another property behind there, Mrs. Keter, and it was done for her at that time. So it wasn't to address the problem that was taking place at the, Mr. McGinnis's home, because we never ever even knew that there was a problem at that home. It was Mrs. Keter behind that was approached council to address an issue there with water that she was having.
This woman was on the beach side, like behind, closer to the beach, or on the other side of the road?
Closer to the beach behind.
Okay, so the way I'm looking at it is the water is flowing from the property across the street, from the Pepin home. So that water that's flowing did not, it's our water, it's our ditch water coming from the opposite side of the road, flowing through the pipe under the road, and then not going where I'm assuming it's probably supposed to be draining down into the bay. But because the pipe is lifting, it's probably not draining where it's supposed to be, right? So I'm not looking at it as a homeowner thing, I'm looking at it as we paid for ditches that aren't draining the way they should be, and the pipe is lifting out of the ground. So even if a homeowner wasn't complaining, even if it wasn't affecting the homeowner, it's affecting our road. So I think it needs to be evaluated just on that merit alone.
Because I think the work they did had nothing to do with the road that time. It was all done on private property. Whatever they did was on private property. So what's happening on the road there now may not be anything that they had addressed back then. What Royce had did back then, because everything they did was on private property. that
Okay,
time.
so what you're saying is you're not sure if it's Roy's that would have put that pipe under the road?
I don't think, no, that road would have
Okay.
been existing from long ago. What it was is,
Okay.
some of the water maybe that was going, but I know all the work that was done in 2005 was done on private property. It was nothing on the public property.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying there's probably a mixture of both there.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think they'd have to come up and have a look at it to see exactly what they had did and then what was there existing before, to give
Okay.
you something out of an idea.
Council also, if I may, your worship, council also need to keep in mind that, you know, and I don't want to blame anybody, I just want to say that's what happens when you're developing, is that when the sawmill came in and they clear cut all that woodlands and everything, so when you have no woodlands to prevent the water that absorbs water, that water's got to go somewhere. So that's what happened there. It increased the flow along Curry and all that area tremendously when the sawmill came in and they clear cut all that wood. So there's been a lot of issues with increased water flow in that area over the years. So that's just, again, some of the history of what Roy Consultants have given us over the years, information where water flow has increased in that area because there's no vegetation basically to absorb the water, so it's got to go somewhere.
well, speaking of that, then maybe then that strip of land that the village owns as a buffer between the residential area and the industrial park, which is right across from basically where this water issue is, maybe the village needs to get that planted then. We could get someone to come up and plant it. It's sitting there and it's a vacant field. If it's gonna help with our water and it's gonna help the environment for having trees, to me, it's a win-win.
The second item was in reference to some of the letters that went out for notices of contraventions to the unsightly premises. And in particular, one property owner had sent a letter, what they were proposing to do, which would only be in the spring of this year. So I had checked with the planning department, and they said the decision on whether council accept that proposal, it's in council's hands, it wouldn't be in the planning's hands. So if council wants to let the individuals know that what they're proposing is acceptable, to address the issue of the contravention to the unsightly premises, then we could just let the planning know, and then they could advise that individual as well that that's acceptable as long as they meet those requirements in the spring. So if that's a directive that council feel comfortable doing.
I feel if we have a commitment from this individual, I say that's fine. Have we heard anything else from the other letters that went out? Do we know from the Planning Commission? Or nothing, eh? There's no response from other letters?
That's the comment, if I may, Your Worship, that's the comment that I was going to make in the sense of saying that I believe this individual deserves to be commended in the sense of saying that they are advising council, that they are prepared to take the action that is required. You know, as you mentioned, I believe there's 5 or 6 or 7 properties that were evaluated. We get one person that has the courtesy to reply to council and in a positive manner, and I think they deserve to be commended. With that said, I'm all in favor of continuing the process with the others, but when you get citizens who, you know, take the matters seriously, that we need to have issues that we need to address, I believe they deserve to be commended for taking that action. So with that said, I'm all in favor of what this individual has recommended.
I think that it's nice of them to reply. I don't necessarily believe that some of the other residents that have received these letters are in the same financial position to be able to bear the burden of removing or tearing down buildings. So although I appreciate the letter and the notice, I do think that there are some residents that would have received a letter that are probably feeling a financial burden right now as to how they are going to bring those buildings down. So I want to state that too, that not everybody has the same circumstances. And, so although it was nice to receive that letter, I don't want to make it appear as though this person is not in a position to be able to do this. And I'm surprised actually that it hadn't happened long ago, but yeah. But as far as the letter goes, I'm in agreement that, yeah, we can wait till spring.
So what happens come the spring if we haven't heard from any of the other homeowners? Do we take it upon ourselves to do this?
The planning commission will walk you through the process of what the next step would be and what the next step would be. They'll have to walk you through it. It's a process. But they'll walk you through that, and whatever resolutions you have to make, and if you have to seek legal advice on things, they'll walk you through the process.
Is this not the second part of the process that they just did by sending out those letters? I think that was the second part of it, and I thought there was maybe three or four levels, and I believe that was the second one.
It's a possibility it could be the second letter. I wasn't here in the beginning, so I'm not sure. But I noticed where it gave a 14 days, so it might have been the second letter. And then from there, but like I said, I could check for the planning to see if they can give you an update as well of what the next steps are and when they'll happen.
I'm sure in the winter it's a difficult process due to the weather and stuff, so.
I can't see anything happening till May anyway, because we didn't even get our snow this winter yet. Once there's too much snow, it's gonna be almost difficult to bring anything down, so I think it's even pretty safe to say that nothing will be touched probably by May anyway.
On? Is it on? Yeah, it's on, okay. Evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, and admin, community member, and community members at home. Just a quick 2022 year in review and 2023 look ahead. Contract service agreements for the instructors for yoga, Zumba, and fitness will be signed on the 10th and 11th of 2023, of January. The instructors are very dedicated and look forward to teaching here in Beldoon, and the participants enjoy all the programs that are offered and look forward to 2023. Participation numbers, January to April is 13 sessions. Yoga, we had 58 local, 18 outside the community, total of 76. So on average, you got 4.5 locals and 1.4 outside per class. Fitness, 79 locals, 0 outside, so 79 total, so 6.1 locals per class. Zumba, 69 locals, 10 outside, 79 total, so 5 locals and 0.8 outside the village per class. That's 13 sessions. We had $3,000 funding by government of New Brunswick, which went towards instructor costs. September to December, same idea. Yoga, 76 locals, 25 outside, so 5.9 locals, 1.9 outside per class. Fitness, 75 locals, 2 outside, 77 total, 5.8 locals per class, 0.2 outside per class. Zumba, 53 locals, 10 outside, 63 total,